Like and subscribe on the way in the door, my people. I hope you all are having a fantastic day today. And we're finally getting back to growing up in the Michael Jordan era. This will be part 4, but before we get to it, it is Monday, so I would like to thank all the people who gave super thanks, and this will actually be over the last couple of weeks, so this might take a second, so bear with me. But first of all, shout out to In the Groove 56 for the $5 super thanks, and he simply says thanks, and thank you very much for supporting the channel. You are greatly appreciated. Next we have at Rudia 2162, and he came through with 2 $5 super thanks, and he simply says thanks. And again, thank you for supporting the channel. You are greatly appreciated. Next super thanks from a familiar face at 43 Vert with the $5 super thanks, and he just says thanks, and thank you to you and your wife for supporting the channel. Next we have at Shad V24. That's at Shad V24 with the $5 super thanks, and he says, stay on these fanboys next. Thank you for the super thanks, and I can guarantee you that I will absolutely stay on these fanboys next. Matter of fact, you know, it's New Year, so we got to ramp things up a bit. So, you know, I'm going to be looking for ways to actually ramp things up. But again, thank you for the super thanks. Next, shout out to at Phenomenon Fitness with the $10 super thanks. He says, uncommon sense, you are a real one. I appreciate the love and the shout out you gave me in one of the videos you posted. I believe you enjoyed Jordan for the same reasons I do. Jordan represents a dying breed. Men that understand that respect is earned, a man's word is his livelihood, integrity is essential, and we are entitled to nothing in this world. Jordan respects those that came before him. He understood that without those that paved the way, he would not be able to do what he did. I wish the players of today understood that. That being said, thank you for paving the way for me as well. Thank you for your content. You are respected by so many in the community and the manosphere. I wish you nothing but prosperity and success in future endeavors in life. And then he just signs him, Marion Gates, a.k.a. Phenomenon, a.k.a. Phenomenal Fitness. Yeah, hey, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Thank you so much for always interacting with the videos, leaving great comments like the one you just left here. And yeah, I must say, I absolutely agree. He says, Jordan represents a dying breed. Men that understand that respect is earned. A man's word is his livelihood. Integrity is essential. And we are entitled to nothing in the world. And I think that is a very true statement. Yeah, you know, I believe everyone who is a Jordan supporter are basically supporters of Jordan for those reasons, more or less. You know, again, I think that's what drew the world to Michael Jordan, is we saw that relentlessness. We saw that unwillingness to give up. We saw that hard work, and you got to respect that. You know, we saw his humility. And, you know, I'm going to go, not to get into this, but hey, this is a Jordan video. You know, we saw the humility, and a lot of fanboys try to come and say stuff like, you know, Jordan did think he was the GOAT. He said it to Wilt Chamberlain. Well, you know, being competitive among other players in the league is different than telling the whole world that you are the GOAT. I know you fanboys don't understand that, but it's like if we're in a competition in the game, yeah, I'm a trash talk you. You know, I'm gonna get in your head, and yes, I believe I'm better than you. But to do that amongst the competition versus declaring it to the whole world is two different things. And whenever Michael Jordan was asked about the GOAT on camera, he always made sure to say that, hey, these are unfair comparisons because I did not get to play against these older players. Like, it is an unfair thing to do that. That was always Jordan's stance, and it never changed. So, you know, I know you fanboys don't understand that. But anyway, shout out to Phenomenal Fitness again. Much appreciated. Next, we got at Snug Chamberlain 9986 with the $5 super thanks, and he just says, thanks, my guy, for the content. Also, I would like to hear your thoughts on the Nick Anderson steal on Michael Jordan in the 1995 conference finals. I think it's blown out of proportion, but if you let the fanboys tell it, they would say Jordan choked or wasn't ready for the moment, even though clearly Jordan was still playing himself into basketball shape, fanboys. Love to take a stab at Jordan every chance they get to prop up the to prop up the remit king, the deer, the gazelle. These Brontards really don't know basketball. Shout out to Angry Old Hoops. But would love to hear your thoughts in a video about that steal. Nick Anderson hasn't done much after that steal. Missed 2 clutch free throws. Give me a break. Yeah, I'll definitely do a video about that. I'll put it on the list. And like I said, during this new year, I'm going to be trying to get to many more requests. So, you know, I'm going to try to do 1 to 2 requests a week during, you know, in the new year, so I can start knocking some of these things out. But again, shout out to at Snug Chamberlain 9986. Shout out to at Bit Mike 9546 with the $2 super thanks. He says, I have a remix for you. Fanboy Friday starts off the weekend, so Uncommon Sense went narrative defeating. Sobbing fanboys was mad because UC Sense put them on their ass. Hey, well, you know, that's what Fanboy Fridays is about. Yeah, and like I said, this Friday we'll be back in full swing, back with the Fanboy Files, and you know, back to slapping these fanboys in the face. Which, you know, I try to do that a little bit every day anyway. But again, shout out to at Big Mike 9546. And last but not least, shout out to at Stan 2537 with the $5 super thanks. He says, what's up, UC? Just showing my appreciation for these videos and let you know that the last few years I haven't been watching a lot of basketball like I used to, but after the last few months listening to your channel and other usual suspects, I have started to watch a lot more than I ever have. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard sometimes. But you and others have made me interested again. Have a safe new year. Much appreciated to at Stan 2537. Yeah, I totally agree. Watching basketball is a hard thing to do with these modern players. You know, I don't even know what to say. You know, it's like they have their moments. You know, they have their moments where I forget how trash the NBA is. But overall, when I'm just looking at the game in totality, it's hard to watch. You know, all the 3-point balls going up. It's just a lack of. I don't like the positionless thing again because to me, it's no hierarchy like that. There's no clear defined leaders and coaches. Is like everything is this blended mesh of everybody trying to get credit for everything. But anyway, shout out to @Stan2537. I know this was a long one, but let's get to a couple of these stories. And first story is from @21Mike Jr. And he says, born and raised in Chicago. I was born in the 80s, so I'm not old enough to remember the first 2 chips, and I vaguely remember the third, but I'm fully aware of the second three-peat. Mike had retired when I got to high school, but what was happening on the courts in the early 90s carried over into the 2000s, especially with guys like Iverson, Kobe, T-Mac, and Vince Carter in their prime years. But even with those guys taking over, everybody still wanted to be Mike. Deuce in high school even formed a group called the Mike Club. To be a part of that club, you had to only wear Jordans and have multiple pairs. The 90s and early 2000s was an amazing time in America in every aspect of life. Shout out to @21Mike Jr. Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, you know that it did carry over into the 2000s. Matter of fact, all those guys that you named, Iverson, Kobe, T-Mac, and Vince Carter, to me, those guys were from the class of guys who were directly influenced by Mike, who were a direct product of Michael Jordan. You know, even though, you know, those guys had some different styles. AI had his own thing, you know. Kobe modeled himself after Mike. But, you know, T-Mac and Vince Carter, you know, those guys had their own thing. But you could tell that these were the group of NBA players who were directly influenced by Michael Jordan and by the way he played. And yeah, I agree. The 90s and early 2000s was definitely an amazing time to be alive in every aspect of life. And again, you know, there were some negatives. You know, I've said this before. During the 90s, you know, people think gang culture is bad now, and it is, especially in different spots. But overall, gang culture in the 90s was the height of gang culture. And that part of it wasn't fun. Again, you know, there were a lot of basketball courts that you had to avoid simply because of that. Because you knew at those courts, you know, the chance for violence was high. But yeah, overall, it was just a great time to be alive. I felt like people lived life more intensely. People live life with more of a purpose. Because now, everybody's just trying to get paid. And it's like, again, it's no integrity anymore. You know, so no integrity about anything anymore. Everybody feels like whatever you got to do to make some money, then is justified. But to me, that's what makes everything cheap. Again, you know, to me, it's about the journey. And the journey is what determines how valuable the prize will actually be. You know, if you really struggled and you didn't take any shortcuts to get there, that prize is going to be worth much more. But anyway, let's move on, because this video is probably going to get a little on the longer side since I had so many super thanks at the beginning. Next story from @TheTitanBorn. And he says, had the pleasure of living through the 90s from 6 to 16 years old. Military kid, grew up mainly in Mississippi, and watching MJ was magical. He dominated with such a level of skill, strength, poise, and elegance that to me is unmatched in my opinion. Yeah, I think we can all agree to that. Again, you know, we've said this before. MJ, there was nothing like him before, and there was nothing like him after. You know, for in terms of being able to wow the basketball audience, and not just the basketball audience, the people who weren't interested in basketball. You know, and there's many great players. And I didn't get to see Wilt Chamberlain. You know, that if there was anyone in the past who I would say I would have loved to been able to witness in person, it would have been Wilt Chamberlain. But at the same time, Wilt Chamberlain was playing during the era where the game wasn't as evolved. So, you know, I think to me the greatest part of anything is where passion and skill are kind of at the height together. I think it takes both of those things. So, but I would have loved to see Wilt Chamberlain play, because to me, in my mind, he might have been someone who was, especially for that time, just as wowing as a Michael Jordan, maybe. But, everybody else, whether you're talking about Oscar or you're talking about Dr. J or you're talking about Bird and Magic, all of those were great players. But we have not seen a player captivate an entire world like Michael Jordan before Michael or after Michael. It just hadn't been done. Fanboys, your king is nowhere close. I know you want to think it is, but it's just not. And again, when we're talking about Michael Jordan, we're talking about, arguably the most athletic NBA player to ever live, combined with the most fundamentally sound, which normally doesn't happen, which again goes to the mentality of Michael Jordan, is understanding that, yes, I'm a gifted athlete, but I need to be able to do the little things perfectly, because that's what separates good from great and great from next level greatness. But yeah, again, shout out to at the Titan Born. All right, next. Shout out to at Stan 2537. And he says, Chicago, born, raised, and still here. When our Bulls won their first championship against the Lakers, I was 8 years old. I will never forget it. I'll never forget any of it. I still watch those games today. The Bulls were so big that at our local park, the Bulls logo was put at half court when it was repaved. When we played at the Boys and Girls Club, we all had our champion jerseys on. Yes, kids today, NBA jerseys were made by Champion back then. Even the authentic ones that no one my age had, but I always looked at them at JCPenney, which was a big store back then. Great times watching Michael, the Bulls, and the NBA in general. When the Bulls would win, we would all parade the neighborhood that day after the game. Folks driving in their cars, celebrating, and all that. Great times. And lastly, in regards to Be Like Mike, I'm 40 years old now. Jordan brand, which obviously wasn't a thing in his era, it was just Nike with Jordan shoes, came out with Like Mike Gatorade line 6 years ago. And I bought the hat and hoodie just to have something that reminded me when I was a kid. I still have them. A piece of my childhood as an adult and what I think is the golden era of basketball. Great idea for this, UC. A lot of good memories. Shout out to @Stan2537. Great story. And so yeah, he talks about being 8 years old when the Chicago won their first championship against the Lakers. And I would say when Michael Jordan did that layup, when he did the layup that gets replayed over and over again, to me, that is when I officially became a Michael Jordan fan. Because again, like I said, back in the day, I started off, I was a Detroit fan. I was a Bad Boy Pistons fan. And, I didn't initially like Michael Jordan. And, because he was a threat to the Pistons. But when I watched that Bulls versus Lakers series and Michael Jordan did that layup, I had to concede that this guy he's just on a completely different level. He's playing on a completely different level than any player we've ever seen before. And again, if for those of you who remember that series, I think Michael had averaged 11 assists or something, 11 or 12 assists during that series. So, he was just doing it all. And you could tell that this guy was hell-bent on getting that championship. And he would not be denied. And then he brought up, the Like Mike Gatorade commercial. Again, just reminiscing on these kind of things. It is something that, I've said this over and over again. For you younger kids, it's something that's really hard to explain what that time was like. The great Gatorade commercials, the Wheaties commercials, Space Jam happening during that time. The commercials with Spike Lee, it's got to be the shoes. It's just, you just can't describe it, And again, I did this series so that people could tell their stories. But again, and hopefully it gets you a little closer to what it felt like to grow up during that time. But yeah, like I said, unless you were there, it's really hard to put into words. But again, shout out to @Stan2537. And we're going to do one more. Shout out to @HQ1181. And he says, from China, think the NBA first entered in the late 80s, but for my region, basketball really started rapid expansion in the mid-90s, thanks to the Dream Team and, more importantly, access to TV and basketball courts. So you actually get to experience the game. In the early days, me and my schoolmates aren't huge basketball fans, and the primary media for me was sports magazines, where I first discovered this dude, Jordan, but never got to see him play. I think it was around the first retirement I got into the sport and started learning about the game, playing with friends and watching live broadcasts, often during weekends, as most games happen in the morning, given time zone difference, and we had to go to school. When Jordan later returned, we finally got to see him play and simply wouldn't believe what we saw. From then on, it was basically skipping school to watch Bulls games and get your ass beat by parents and dudes lining up during class breaks to shoot junk at the trash can while yelling, I can't pronounce it, but it's Qiaodan. In parentheses, he says that's Chinese for Jordan. The biggest accomplishment you can get as a boy after school is to one day come into class with a pair of Jordans, and you are supposed to allow each of your buddies to step on them just a little on the first day to help relieve their pain and envy. All these would continue into the 2000s after Yao Ming was drafted. And to me, 90s through 2000s are easily the best time for basketball and the best time of my life. P.S. I finally got my first pair of Jordans years later in 2002. I think they were Jordan 18s, the last Jordan worn by MJ at his final game at the Wizards. Shout out to @HQ1181. Great story from China. And to me, I love reading the stories from people who lived overseas, because we know how big Jordan was here in America, but to get insight from people who were living overseas, to me that's just more insight to not only how big Jordan was, but people's reactions to seeing Jordan play. Again, we all know this, but again, it's that ability to make non-basketball fans watch basketball. And when we're talking about people overseas, like he was saying, basketball didn't really become a thing to the rapid expansion in the mid-90s. The Dream Team, which we all know the Dream Team is responsible for taking the game global. But it took people watching Michael Jordan, the greatness of Michael Jordan, the beauty of his game, again, the relentlessness, the never give up kind of attitude. That is what drew people in from all over the world. So again, thanks everybody for sharing your stories. There are quite a few more stories, so I say we got at least 2 or 3 more parts coming up. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Again, if you haven't left your story, feel free to leave it on this video. And you all have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time. All right.